So that's part of my motivation of both writing the book and having this platform is to have a way to discover that history. I'm a industry analyst. I've been doing this since I was at Gartner in 2000, 2004 timeframe. So for 15 years, I had a large Google sheet of 2,000 or some vendors, and I'd track their headcount and their funding and all that information. Finally decided to put it all in a book. And the way they came out was at RSA. So we're
So
going back to
you
RSA this year. You wanted me to mention it. I'm taking all the copies of Security Yearbook 2023 that I have left, which is only about 150. In each copy of the old book, this one, there will be a 40% discount coupon for the new book from Wiley.
nice.
So definitely worth stopping by the booth. If you want this edition, you should come by Monday night or early Tuesday because 150 books will go pretty fast.
Hello everyone, welcome to Cyber Inspiration Podcast. My name is Evgeny. I have been around cybersecurity for the last 20 years and I have a lot of experience working with a variety of cybersecurity vendors. My main work is vendor consulting and cybersecurity advisory for companies. As part of my passion in technology and cyber, I've been intrigued to learn how a company starts. I started the podcast to understand the thinking process and what motivated people to start their own company. This podcast is affiliated with Security Architecture Podcast.
I'm very, very happy to be here today to record Richard and his journey about the books. Before we start, I do have the copy of 2022 book. I don't have the copy of the latest one, but we'll get it very, very soon because RSA is coming very, very soon. And I'm going to be in RSA and Richard going to be in RSA. So Richard, tell me about the book in case people don't know who you are. Tell me who you are and please tell me about RSA as well.
So I'm a industry analyst. I've been doing this since I was at Gartner in 2000, 2004 timeframe. When I left Gartner, I started just collecting data on all the cybersecurity vendors. So for 15 years, I had a large Google sheet of 2,000 or some vendors, and I'd track their headcount and their funding and all that information. And finally decided to put it all in a book. And the way they came out was at RSA. So I was signing books in Zscaler's booth, Secure Cloud Transformation, still my bestseller. And we had a line out the booth and into the aisleway between the other booths. And it was just constant stream of people as I signed 400 books. And I remember distinctly shaking hands with every person who came up. And quite a few of them said, hey, my employer sent me here to learn about the security industry because I'm new to it. And I remember just being struck by, wow, this is not a good place to be introduced to the security industry, right? You're going to get one message. That year it might have been XDR or something else, right? There's always that one message that everybody repeats. Certainly this year coming up, it'll be AI. Besides that, I was thinking, this is great. I'm in a booth, I'm signing all these books, I'm generating leads such as they are for Zscaler. If I write a book for security or for RSA 2020, I'll be able to get sponsors that have me in their booth to sign books. So should be a great financial model. And I also was walking the show floor and I'd run into these startup guys who had taken all their cash and bought a booth at RSA and couldn't afford to furnish it, etc. But they were standing there hoping to engage people in conversations. I'd come up, I'd say, what do you do? And they'd say, oh, we inoculate the operating system and randomize the system calls so no malware will work on it. And I'd go, oh, like Santa Security. And they'd go, who's that? So that's when I realized we're losing our societal memory of what went before. And so 2 reasons now to write the book: a place to publish my directory and a place to educate both new entrants, students, and people in the industry about what went before. And so I started interviewing pioneers that were still with us. I talked to Gil Schwed at Checkpoint. And it was a funny story. He wasn't going to do it. But then I worked through another contact to get Marius Nacht, who's chairman of Checkpoint. He agreed to do it. And as soon as he agreed, Gil said, no, I'll do it. So
Bill's threat is still on my to-do list for cyber inspiration as well. So I need to follow your lead to get him there somehow.
Yeah, it would be great. So call Marius and get Marius to do it, and then we'll see. So Gil was the first one interviewed, but I also reached out to David Collin, who's the founder of VeriSign, but also a Bessemer partner, Amit Uran, just over a dozen, I think about 16 people that were there at the beginning. So I put the book together and published it in time for RSA 2020, and COVID hit. and like everything fell apart. And the book was extremely successful. Great launch, man. I was like running from after party to after party, handing out books, and 400 signed in Synopsis's booth, and people were signing me up for speaking engagements. There was one fancy one in Sonoma that I was going to do, and then COVID hit and everything was canceled. Nothing happened after that. So we're
So
going
you
back to RSA this year. You wanted me to mention it. Booth 4309. I'm taking all the copies of Security Yearbook 2023 that I have left, which is only about 150. I have to get rid of them because Wiley, who's publishing the next version, doesn't want me promoting the old book. In each copy of the old book, this one, there will be a 40% discount coupon for the new book from Wiley.
nice.
So definitely worth stopping by the booth. If you want this edition, you should come by Monday night or early Tuesday, because 150 books will go pretty fast.
Sure about that. So again, remind the booth number for everyone who gives a message.
Booth number 4309. It's in the area with a bunch of small booths in the North Hall when you're walking towards the South Hall.
Nice. Okay, we'll definitely mention the show notes, and I'm going to see you there at the booth as well. So you and me have an interesting history because you mentioned vendors. I think the first time we met, I don't know, 8-9 years ago, we were talking about the vendor databases.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of our friends that also are talking about vendor databases, like a community of people that want to have their own database. For now, I see you're the only one that should have a real one. All of us have some kind of a Excel, Airtable, or our home version. So respect for this part. If people you're listening and you don't know about our database, go to itharvest.com, check it out. We'll put a link there as well. But today we're going to talk about the book. We're not going to be technical. We're going to give you geeky about how you write the book and what's make you to write the book. So if you're listening to the episode and you have an idea to write a book, you may listen to some other shows before. We had Cassie about supply chain tab, and we had Ross that you took part about pushing Ross out of his comfort zone to write his book as well.
Ross was doing so well with his Substack, but they're very long Substacks. And it's hard to write long and engaging things, right? Some people, you just lose your interest right away, but not Ross, because you just got so much to say. That's why they're long. And that's when I knew right away he had a book in him. He could easily write a book, right? Because that's how I got to it. So I started my book writing journey. First of all, I have to explain. All the way through college, I was a tremendous procrastinator, horrible student. I even decided not to pursue a master's degree because I knew I'd have to write a master's thesis, and I just wouldn't be able to accomplish it. So I knew that much about me. But then in 2005, when I was at Webroot, I started the blog post Threat Chaos, and I was just drawn to it. I wrote 3 times a week for years, got up to 300,000 views a month. And when I restarted to IT Harvest in 2008, I knew I had to write a book, and I knew the topic. It was going to be cyber war. And I did a quick calculation to figure out how many words I'd written in my blog, and that was 300,000 by then. I'm sure it's over 1 million now. And I realized 300,000, that's 2 books. So I could easily write a book. The mechanics of it was no longer something to be afraid of. So I sat down and wrote that book called Surviving Cyber War. It was published by an academic press, so it was pricey. They wanted $78 for a thin little book. Nobody bought it, nobody's read it, but it inspired me to go on in my academic career. I did get my master's, and I did write my master's thesis, and I turned the master's thesis into the next book, which was There Will Be Cyber War. So now I just love writing books. It's the best thing ever. It's the best feeling to finish it. It's the best feeling to hold the first copy in your hand. There's nothing better, and if you figure out that you are a writer at heart, then you have to go all in and write a book, right?
Let's jump in and go right to the meat and potato. Okay, we'll talk about this stuff later on.
Yeah.
So I guess the main part, you mentioned procrastination, and I think the biggest problem. I'm talking to many people in the industry, as many of my friends, people I know, working on a book or had a book or thinking about a book.
Yep.
But then, do I write when I have an energy, motivation? Ross is just basically allocating time. Different people doing different things, but I think the majority of us are busy with kids, family, work, other things, and we cannot do the writing itself. What is your process? What is your magic? How do you make sure it's happening?
Of course, it's taking some dedicated time to outline the book, and you're just throwing everything in there, right? It is hard to get to 180, 200,000 words. That's a lot of writing. So you better include as much as you can. So sketch out an outline and then keep breaking down. You'll break down each chapter. We're talking nonfiction, of course, break down each chapter into subheadings and then each subheading into what eventually will be paragraphs of, 300 to 500 words each. So once you got all that in place, then I schedule a week away from home. So at a cheap hotel, preferably with a view of Lake Michigan or Lake Huron, and the ocean would work just as well, I'm sure, or Mountain View for some people might work. I have to have that horizon out there. It just makes me write. I don't know why. And I'm paying $99 a night. I can't procrastinate because you can't spend $99 a night to go somewhere and watch Netflix, right? So you actually have to do it. I bring a cooler with enough high protein food in it that I can just get up, eat some hard-boiled eggs, have my coffee, and start writing at 8 a.m. And then write continuously, maybe a break to eat something, but write continuously till 5 p.m. Then take a break, catch up on your email, call your wife, and do all that, and go to bed and start all over the next day. You do that 5 days in a row.
So if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned about a special way you write. You have like a own machine or device when you only can see one row. And I don't know if my
Yeah.
memory
So
serves me correctly or not.
that's right. That's right. So that's when you're stuck, right? Or your butt hurts from sitting in a seat. So you grab the name's escaping me, but I can tell you afterwards, but it's a little keyboard with 4-line LCD screen. And I buy them for $25 on eBay. And a single charge or a single load of batteries in it lasts 800 hours. So that's what I use to write on airplanes, on long airplane trips and stuff. And I did write that first book on that. And even when I was in Estonia, I was writing on it. What's good about that is you can't edit while you write. Whereas on your computer, you can just keep going back and you see all the misspelled words with the squiggly red line under them, and you have to go back and correct it because you've got OCD. And when you're writing on this thing, you can barely see the screen. You can just see it enough to know that you're hitting the right letters, and you spit out words, right? You can write 2,000 words. And then you go back to your computer, plug it in via USB, and it uses I think it's called TTY, the typing protocol, and it types it into whatever document you've got open. It's just a great way to get words down. It's super powerful.
Now, in every book, depending on the topic, you have several books. You need to do research. Tell us, what is your research? I know you interviewing people already mentioned, but there's probably something else as well.
Yeah. So note that I didn't say research before you go off on this trip to write the book. So on the trip, you are going to write all the things that come easily to you, right? So you're just going to write the beginning and the ends of each chapter because you're making a point in a chapter. And so you lay the point out in the beginning and you get the story built. And then your story arc is you're going to be talking about Symantec was formed as a PC utility company. And so you come back from that trip and you might have 20,000 words written, right? So you get to the way there. But now you take some time to think about other things you didn't think about before. So you can fill out and write more. And then you go back and check all the dates. And you know that Symantec started in the 90s, but you don't know exactly when. So you go check that out. And a good place for big companies, of course, is Wikipedia. Little companies, man, they just disappear forever. They're just gone. And even if you remember the name of the founder and find him or her on LinkedIn, they may not mention that company that failed, but was still an important player at the time. So that's, of course, I'm researching cybersecurity vendors. But it's tough. The Wayback Machine is your friend. It's almost, I'm writing contemporary history because it only goes back about 25 years. But if you think about that, you can't find history online of things 25 years ago. That's like,
especially if the company acquired, disappeared from.
Disappears, yeah. I quickly learned that, hey, companies like Santa Security, good luck finding them. You do Google searches or Wayback Machine stuff. There's plenty of stuff there because they had a marketing team that was issuing press releases. So there's a historical record. But as soon as a company starts to fail, the marketing team's fired. They don't spend money on press releases. Nobody talks about them. No history of it. So that's part of my motivation of both writing the book and having this platform is to have a way to discover that history.
So what happened when you just hit the wall. You have no energy. You're like, why am I doing that? Like, do you have this time when you just lose interest completely?
It's not like losing interest. The no motivation is there, man. Oh boy, it's so bad. And it's a struggle. I used to have a magic pill that would get me past it, and that was nicotine. Nicotine is the best thing for me getting past procrastination. And I learned that when I had gone back to school. Not smoking, of course, so I can imagine that's just as good, but nicotine lozenges. But I gave them up 9 months ago, and I've had to struggle with the procrastination again. But eventually, as the deadline approaches, like, hey, it's tomorrow and you have to write a book. At least you start. You're going to be behind for a while, but you can catch up.
So we didn't touch this part because I know you went as a publisher. You didn't do self-publishing.
Oh, yes, I did. So my first book was published with a publisher. Everything else after that, until Net Ones and Zeros, was self-published. This book I not only self-published, but I print it myself. And print it, bind it, and design it, and all the work that KDP will do for you. We did because I didn't want to go through Amazon because it's a lot cheaper per book if you have offset printing. So, but you have to print about 8,000 copies to get the price advantage. But it's a cool process, very cool process. And
Something to learn. I didn't know about this part.
Takes 10 weeks to print a book this way from having a final manuscript. So you have to have all that time in there. The 2023 version is right now at the printers. Oddly, it's the same printer that I used. This is prints for Wiley. Probably explains why it took 10 weeks, because Wiley gets in there ahead of me because they print a lot of books. Wiley has 70 new books a quarter.
So what's the difference between doing self-publication and going with publisher? And I mean, with the publisher, you have somebody to push you, have a deadline. You need to do that,
Right.
XYZ,
Right.
with yourself. And I'm not talking about the financial part. I'm more talking about, do they force you to do certain way? Can you do, I guess when you do yourself, you can do whatever you want, it's your book.
Right.
So what's the difference, especially if somebody's new to writing and they want to choose what to do? What are the pros and cons from your perspective?
Yeah, if you know you're going to self-publish, then you've got fewer barriers to doing things differently, right? A publisher is going to say, look, here's our template, right? You got to number each chapter, and then each subheading into the chapter has got a decimal number. It's things like that. It's not too onerous what they require. And they do keep after you, which is great if you need that somebody cracking the whip over you. I thought that they would do a better job of marketing, but pretty much not. You would think that a publisher would go all out to make sure your book is a success and invest in stuff. My first publisher, I could talk less favorably about because you wouldn't want to do that about your current publisher. So the first publisher, when they first brought me on board, introduced me to their marketing manager who would be handling my campaigns and help coordinate speaking engagements, all that good stuff. And then a few months later, before the book published, I got this contact, a LinkedIn request from somebody. So a woman in Washington, D.C., who's a waitress. And I'm going, I don't know any waitresses in Washington, D.C. Who could this be? So I looked at her history. She was the marketing person from Roman and Littlefield who was out of a job. and now, anyways, so there was zero support. I paid for my own book launch at the National Press Club and bought books that I had to take to the press club and asked for support, and they didn't offer any. They didn't provide any books or anything. I had to purchase my own books. Get to the press club, and who's there but my acquisition editor from the publisher? He was there, and he wanted a copy of my book signed. And he helped himself to the cheese and wine that we were serving. It's just, it's a cheap and shady business. So they don't support you. But the upside is, if part of writing a book is to gain credibility, everybody knows the difference between self-published and traditionally published, right? There's a bar that you have to cross, and there won't be as many typos or misstatements or weird things in a published book than there is in a self-published book.
I'll take you back to the beginning. Let's say this type of book, the vendor book. Would you do anything differently? Because you've been doing this for 4 years right now, this type of book. And if you take back, would you write it differently? Would you go a different path? Would you maybe structure it differently?
I don't think so, because I think in a certain structure, and I want this to be a little textbook-like because there's so many students. And so I think in reading through the book, I've organized it like a layered defense model. So I talk about network and endpoint and identity and just track you through those layers of defense and then all the other ones. And, history is also a good hook to hang something on because there's an automatic storyline. You got a timeline. That's great. So I wouldn't change that at all. The only thing I'd change is I would change the number of copies I pre-printed. So I only sell 2,000 each year, and the first year I printed 8,000. So that meant it's kind of heartrending, but I had to hire a recycling firm to come up and pick 6,000 books up from the warehouse, chop the binding off, and put them in shredders. And that hurts a lot.
Yes.
Especially when I'd be perfectly happy to give them away. But look at selling books is so hard that you can't give them away, right? You can't find people that will say, yeah, send me a book. No, they don't want it on their bookshelves. It's cluttering their home. So
You're right.
it's really tough.
I have another question, probably one the last one for today. During this period of time, was there anything like significant moment or moments that you knew, okay, the book I'm writing is the right book? It resonated with certain people.
No, and that happened with me, and this helps if you're a writer. I just had ultimate confidence that this book was going to be a great book. And literally, I can say it's my life's work, right? It encompasses everything I know about business and the cybersecurity industry. Yeah, I never had any change that reinforced that. It's always gratifying when there's 300 or 400 pre-orders on Amazon, which the very first 2020 was printed and published on demand for Amazon.
Nice. I guess last one, because I didn't ask this part, is who is your ideal reader? Who do you think read your book the most? Is this the vendors? Is this practitioners? Is this the CISOs? What do you hear? Who is think, oh my God, I actually understand it's helped me so much.
Yeah. A lot of salespeople in the industry, a lot of students, PhD students especially, start with a book and then reach out to get more current data from me, which I'm happy to give them. Oh, and the whole segment of people getting into security, but then industry veterans like reading it because there's this nostalgic thing. And it's really fun to read history about things that you've lived through yourself, right? Always has been for me. So, I can read about not quite the Kennedy years, but certainly the Nixon years and remember the points in time related to the Nixon administration. So I think that's where the readers come from.
Great. I do have another question. Sorry, I was just thinking we're almost done.
Sure.
So I know 2024 is coming. In like 1, 2 sentences, what's the biggest difference compared to other books? What's new? What's like very different? Or people gonna looking for that you think gonna be differential in this book?
Yeah, first of all, you're going to get the personal stories of all these pioneers. And there's one that appeared in 2023 that only 1,500 people have read the book. So 2024 will be new to most people. We've got Eva Chen's story. So one of the co-founders and now CEO of Trend Micro. We've got the Katkar brothers who founded Quick Heal in India in the same time frame as all the rest of them, right? So 95 was kind of birth age of big cybersecurity companies that are still with us. And Quick Heal is public. And Kailash Katkar had a computer fix-it shop in Pune, I think. And his brother went to school to be a computer programmer. So he asked his brother to fix a problem that he kept having because people were bringing computers in with viruses on them. He just couldn't get them off. So his brother wrote the original Quick Heal software to quickly
Yes.
heal hard drives. So, or keep floppies out of there, whatever. And then the founder of Savvy is the first of the next generation of founders that I'm starting to interview because he's young.
Guy's a good friend.
Oh, good. Yeah. And guy is young, but he's experienced, right? He's had a
Yes.
successful exit, spent time at Checkpoint. So,
So he was my R&D manager in Checkpoint.
oh my goodness. Wow.
Yes, that's how I know. Like I know him.
Cool. So yeah, good guy. So he's the only new one in this edition. This edition goes back to publishing the directory with an alphabetical list and a by country list, and by state in the US, and then by category. So people do use it to find solutions when they're saying, oh, Symantec, for instance, stopped selling their two-factor authentication one-time password tokens. So one CISO in Texas just opened my book and found another supplier. So that's kind of what inspired the creation of the dashboard, is to help people do that.
Awesome, Richard. Thank you very much. Always happy to chat with you. We not always have the time to chat face to face, and sometimes there's too many things happening. But I hope we're gonna have more time spending face to face as well. See you soon at RSA. Everyone's listening. Thank you very much. Enjoy the episode. If you at RSA, come see Richard at the booth. And thank you very much. We'll see you soon in the next episode.